Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Daily Detroit. It is June 19th, a Wednesday, Juneteenth. And we're going to have an interesting conversation today. Of course, joining me in the studio is none other than to my left, Fletcher Sharp. How are you?
It's a federal holiday, so...
And to be clear, we are actually pre-recording this.
Yes, it's a federal holiday, so you know...
We are not here right now.
I will be sitting.
Fair. As you should. And then to my right, Norris Howard. How are you?
And my whole crew is lounging. Champagne every day, no more public housing.
It's good to see you both. So why don't we kick off this conversation?
Yes, sir.
With a piece of feedback that I kind of often get that I want to unpack a little bit with both of you. It's interesting to me because we are Daily Detroit, but a lot of times people do not understand that we talk about Metro Detroit. Mm-hmm. They get mad. They get in our inbox. They'll tweet at us. They'll thread at us, whatever. Well, especially in context of what happened over the weekend, Rochester Hills is not Detroit, or blank is not Detroit. And I'm going to start off this conversation with, do you expect WXYZ or WDIV to only talk about the city of Detroit? And I also think we are all connected. I'll start there. Whoever wants to grab the floor, go.
I'll grab it because I think you actually took the comparison out of my mouth, which is if you were somebody who lived in Rochester Hills and you cut on your TV and your local Detroit news didn't come on and didn't talk about what happened out there this or last week, you would be angry. You would be upset. And then also, not to mention, there was another shooting at a party in which 6 people were shot in Lathrop Village. Neither one of those places are Detroit. Detroit news has to cover it. That's just the way it works. And the thing about it is that when we're talking about the city of Detroit, we're also talking about a place that has been significantly gutted and is significantly smaller than when some of you got here. You got to talk about the suburbs, because if you don't, you're kind of not even really talking to the people who would care to listen. And that's another big thing that I think people have to realize, which is, the city of Detroit has a lot of folks who are much more concerned with making sure that their bus arrives on time and they don't miss it, or making sure that they can get to work on time, or making sure that their kid's school doesn't cave in on their head. The kid's school doesn't cave in on their kids' heads, as opposed to listening to a news podcast about the city of Detroit. And obviously I want everybody to listen to this, but
and we have some bus rider listeners. Absolutely. And they show up, and I love them. You made a point there, and I want to interject, is that people don't realize that 2/3 of Detroiters go to the suburbs for work, and 75% of jobs in the city are held by suburbanites. Crossing borders is what we do. And if you don't acknowledge that, you're not living in reality, in my opinion.
Also, do you not listen to the show? Like, the tagline is what to know and where to go in Metro Detroit. Like, it's we say it at the beginning, we say it at the end, sometimes in the middle. Like, come on, man. Like, I know if you're here listening, like, you actually do listen and care about the show, but like we've made it's not like we're being like we only talk about the city of Detroit and it's like, surprise, we're gonna talk about Plymouth. Like, no, it's we've made that very clear. And to your point about crossing borders, I mean, I live in Grosse Pointe, but like, I care about what happens in the city of Detroit because like, I work in Detroit. I do things in Detroit. I have friends and family who live in the city. And like, if I don't care about these things that happen here, if I only focus on what happened in Grosse Pointe and nowhere else, like, I would be so ignorant of most things happening every single day. And like, you have to know these things just to know them. And I mean, I'm dumb, and like, this makes sense to me, and it's not just, I don't know, it's not clicking for anybody else.
I think when people say that, it's just intellectually dishonest. I think it's, people who want to stand on the pillar of their own righteousness and to say that they are more informed or more cool or more for the city than other people.
Like, I see a lot of gatekeeping, especially among, the weird thing is that like, and this would be something that people might be a little stunned at, but like, I am the Detroit resident at this table.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true. A lot of people don't realize that. Now, I've only been out of the city for a couple years, but yeah, Jared is the Detroit resident here. And I'm going to say something that I think, also offends a lot of people. And you and I had this conversation in person a few days ago, Jared, which is I get really tired of people who either have not been here for as long as I have, meaning my whole life, or folks who have only created a recent interest in the city of Detroit because of whatever, telling me, somebody who's been here my whole life, what I need to emphasize and what needs to be important for me to report or for me to care about. You can care about what you care about, but don't tell me what to do because you're the rookie here.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've moved out of Detroit to Grosse Pointe, I think maybe like 6, 7 years ago, but like I've lived through this city my entire life, save for like 1 month where I was out of the country. So like to have someone show up and be like, perfect example. A friend of mine used to live on the east side by Rivertown Market, and like occasionally they would have some people who would block off the streets, do some donuts, whatever, and leave. And I'm not saying that that's great, but it's like everyone who lives here understands this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Like we just know, okay, maybe this weekend, maybe this Saturday night, maybe we watch a movie, maybe we go out and do something, but like they're not harming anybody, they're not doing anything else, they're not breaking through whatever. Someone moved in, they called the police like for a month straight every Saturday. And it's like, why would you do this thing that like, I'm not saying again, it's great, but it's a part of this neighborhood's ecosystem. People understand stuff. People know, okay, this is going to happen here. These people are going to be here. We'll be gone by this time. Everything will be fine. So to like have people who come in and like haven't, like you said, have an interest all of a sudden for whatever reason they have it for, knowing it could be potentially be a fleeting interest or like, I need to change this to suit my liking. And then they leave as a result. Like, what does that do for the ecosystem?
I just want to chime in. And a perfect example for me is I remember when, and this is no diss to the folks over there, but it was an illustration of what you just said. Is I remember right before the pandemic where I believe it was Motor City Brewing Works were moving to or trying to attempt to open a location on Avenue of Fashion.
Yes, and I was at that opening. Yeah.
And the signage said moving uptown 2021. And I said, what is uptown? What is that? That's not a real place in the city of Detroit. Don't exist. Who told you that existed? And it was one of those moments where it just felt like you don't even know where you are. So please, I implore everyone, just stop telling us what to report because we're here to help you. And I'm pretty sure there was somebody who appreciated us talking about what happened in Rochester Hills or talking about what happens in Canton or Ferndale or wherever. That's okay because we're here to try to talk to as many people as possible.
Couple of thoughts. I think one, there are a lot of people out there who don't know more than 5 or 7 neighborhoods of the city of Detroit.
This is true.
Right? They don't have that experience. They come in, they leave. That happens in a lot of cities. Another thought that I have is that I think as a region, we need to wrestle with the idea that blackness is everywhere and blackness crosses borders.
Sure does.
Right? Like whether it's
not just in Detroit and Southfield.
Yeah. Like it is something that is important and it affects our demographics. I remember one of the most controversial animated GIFs I ever shared was a few years ago when I showed the population change in colors and people lost their ever-loving minds.
Yeah.
I mean, some people know that blackness is everywhere and they tend to focus on the negative. We're going to try to skip over those people.
Right.
But I mean, like it's just frustrating to Norris's point to like say the people who lived in Cass Corridor, like this is Cass Corridor. I know Cass Corridor. I get it. I know this area. And then all of a sudden it's like, nope, this is Midtown. And then not even is it Midtown. Like now this is something else entirely. And it's like, people are here. People know what these things are called. Stop changing the names.
And it's fully for commerce because I've talked to business owners around this.
Yeah. It's a branding thing.
Yeah, and they're like, hey, it's all about branding. Cass Corridor makes people not want to come here. We want to make money, so we're going to try to change that name.
Yeah, and listen, to a certain extent, I get it because at least with Cass Corridor, there was opportunity and not a lot of people were fighting each other over Cass Corridor. Like, let's be honest, right? But when we're talking about other neighborhoods and other places across, especially the city proper of Detroit, like these are places with very well-defined cultures, demographics, people who have been over there. You went to Fletcher UAD, so it's like anybody trying to go anywhere in that neighborhood and changing up anything, it's silliness. You talking about one of the most stable neighborhoods in the entire city and has been for 50, 60, 70 years.
And if people really knew, like there are some really big heavy hitters around the city who just live in Sherwood Forest and just live around that area, and just to see so many people say we can make this northeast. No, don't. Just keep it what it is. It's fine. It's understandable. Like this is the name change is not going to help anything. I assure
Yeah.
you, it might make you feel like this is something new and different, but it's really not. It's the same it was before. And just please stop.
Yeah, and the last thing I just want to say to Jared's point about blackness being everywhere is that when you're coming to this region and a few other regions across the United States, places like Atlanta, places like Houston, you have to confront blackness. And what I mean by that, not in an antagonistic way, but you can't drop down and all of a sudden assume that whatever you're doing is going to just be you and your cloistered community. No, you are going to have to interface with the African American community in these places. And I think it's really important when we're talking about a show like ours and talking about Metro Detroit. There's no way I would do a news show and talk about this region and not often talk about Southfield and not often talk about Redford and not often talk about Southwest Detroit and not often talk about a lot of these areas that have a lot of my people in them. So in what world would it be smart for me if my objective is to solely talk about the black experience, omit those places just because they don't fall within 142 square miles?
I think also a lot of people forget that we have families, careers, and jobs all over this region. All of us do. And keeping things with like a hard border. You know, another thing that I think people don't realize, there are some outlets out there that are fully Detroit focused, and that is because they get foundation dollars. They are charged with a nonprofit and nonprofit money to cover a specific area. And that is why they are Detroit focused, because there's no real business model for just one city only. Like,
And
that
that's
doesn't-
okay.
and that's okay. But
Yeah.
that's something that I think I've talked to a lot of people who didn't realize there are a number of outlets that are just nonprofits.
I mean, even outside the state, like you have places, large cities like Los Angeles and New York, and like even still, they still talk about what's happening in Brentwood or what's happening in somewhere else in California or what's happening just outside of New York.
Long Island.
Like they're like those are some huge, massively large cities, which I'll admit much larger than Detroit. And even still, they talk about the metropolitan area of those places because it all matters. It all factors back in. Yes, while Detroit would be the focal point of Southeast Michigan for sure, the entire region matters. And if you just omit the entire region to talk about the one focal point here, you'll be missing on so many different people, so many listeners, so many potential new fans, so many potential etc. The entire thing goes down if you just want to focus on one thing. And that's, I guess the phrase is, you don't see the forest for the trees.
There you go.
I agree. And throughout human history, isn't it true that cities are hubs? And
Always have
cities
been.
only get their power by being connected to other things, by being the center of culture where all these people from around the city want to go. Like, that's how cities work. And if you deny that, you're like denying how like civilization works.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's really hard to say it better than that. So to all the folks who want us to just focus on the city of Detroit and the city of Detroit only, no.
It's home. We're based here. We love that being our hub, but it's the heart of a larger body.
There you go.
Something I want to bring up that's maybe a little awkward. Let's get awkward.
Okay.
How often in the last few years, it's been a thing, and I've noticed this, we've got a lot of work to do with diversity in media in this town, don't we?
That's a polite way to put it.
I mean, I'm going to start that way. But
Okay.
we have a lot of work to do considering some of the rooms that we have been in recently. And it is absurd that our little like engine that could does what we do.
Yeah, it is. I'll just say this, and I'm gonna try to, say certain things, and because I don't want to, denigrate or talk down on anybody else or any other outlet, because I think.
Oh no, this isn't about any individual.
Yeah. No individual outlets, but I think it's really important for us to talk about this, especially under the veneer of Juneteenth, is to say, it does concern me that, when we're talking about one of the largest African American metropolitan areas in the country, that a lot of especially in our sort of alternative media outlets, there's not a lot of us. And what I mean us, I mean Black folks. And that does concern me. And I think beyond that, when I go and I see all the people who go up to like Mackinac, I see the people who are kind of in the trenches. It's not to say that there's none, But I think there's a lack of perspective specifically from cats like myself, cats like Fletcher, who spent the vast majority of our childhood and early adult years being Detroiters. That I feel like that perspective is not quite as prevalent as it should be, especially considering the size of the city. Because there are things I could talk about on this show from like between the years of 2002 and 2012. That's just like those are just like the dark ages. Those are just like the missing years for so many people when it comes to the Detroit narrative. And it's like, nah, we was here the whole time.
I think important is to work with intention. Like when we slipped you into, we didn't slip you. It wasn't sneaky in any
It
way.
wasn't
But like,
clandestine.
right. But like you doing part of the Detroit Policy Conference and doing some other events like that, that's an intentional move.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, to Norris's point, like there are definitely some people who look like us who are in situations like that, and I'm glad to see them. But also, like for the demographic of the city, there should be more. There should be a lot more. I'm not gonna say it should be 100%, but like
And the region for that matter, even the region, people do not realize this is a diverse region.
35% like seems like bare minimum numbers, and like even thinking that is like an extreme thought to just have. And just and to Norris's point about the years of 2002 to 2000, like, and you could tell these stories and like you got people saying like, oh, something similar happened to me, or like the same exact thing, and like just, but when people frame it from outside of the region, it's like this was just like the lawless, just nothing was happening. And it's like, this is insane. Cause like, I didn't go anywhere during these years. Like I can point to you to my porch, literally where I was. And the fact that just they bring in so many people, and that's great because you want your city to grow. You need people from outside to come in as well and do things as well. But just to not cultivate, it's like trying to grow a garden, and like, instead of just watering the same plant you have, you're like, I'll just keep getting in more flowers. It's fine. And it's like the original flowers you had might be suffering a bit. And while you have some new nice flowers here, like you should probably water what you have, or else you're just going to become overgrown, and then everything's going to die.
There's tension.
Yeah.
And, I even think about stuff like that. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine as I was like, yeah, man, like back in the day, I used to go to Altered State, and they looked at me like, what is that? I was just like, oh, well, the Fillmore Theater, it used to be called the State Theater, and they turned it into a nightclub every Saturday night. And he was like, what? He's like, when was this? Couldn't have been recent. It's always been the Fillmore. I was like, no.
We have lost so much of our community. I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah. We have lost so much of our community history, and we continue to. I feel like that's something that I feel is sometimes slipping away, that we need to make sure that we grab on.
Because people don't talk to folks like me and Fletcher, like you do, but nobody's reaching out to us. Nobody's reaching out to say who is here to chronicle bankruptcy era Detroit, like from an on the ground perspective. Like not many people, and I think that's something that has always sort of hurt us and hurt our narrative, because to as Fletcher said, like people just view it as like this era where it was just like lawless and all we did was murder each other. Like, no, like there were people here. I was in college. Like there were plenty of other people who were here in college having a good time, still being in the city. And I just get really concerned, and I just get really frustrated when somebody can, sit down and tell me my own history and think that I'm not going to feel salty about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, my father and I were talking to someone, and they're like, yeah, they're rolling tanks down in the 60s. And my father was like, yeah, it's like, and they were just blowing stuff. And my dad's like, that's not what happened.
He's like, I was here.
He's like, I literally have photos like that I've taken. And he's like, those are doctored. He's like, they came from my camera. Like they're not, these are my photos. And the person's like, well, they were here and people were just throwing cocktails everywhere, just blowing. And it's like, all right, like this person clearly is trying to tell us about something that like I have lived eyes telling me is very different.
Yeah.
So like I prefer you just stop talking now, sir. And just to have that happen over, and even just whether it's something not even as big as that, something small of like, this place used to be this, and it's like, oh no, it didn't. And it's like, no, literally, like I've been inside that building when it was something else. And it's like, all right. And it's like, okay, I don't know why you're telling, like, I'm telling you like a fact. I'm not telling you this to like make you be like, oh, just kidding.
Uncomfortable, yeah.
It's like, this is a thing, and like stuff changes, and like living through cities, like stuff will change. But when you bring in people who don't understand that things used to be different and are like, well, it's only been this one thing to me, so clearly you're wrong. It's like, all right, man, we don't need to have this conversation anymore.
I just, and I guess it's an open question of like why is that energy like that? Like that's the thing I don't understand, because I actually think that is something that, particularly Black people experience a lot, which is somebody telling us that our history didn't happen or our history was not how we remembered it is quite common occurrence.
I mean, it's Columbusing.
Yeah, it is. It is a quite common occurrence amongst, I would definitely say most people of color in America, but definitely Black folks. And it's like when you have a city like ours that has, let's be quite honest, could not exist in its current incarnation without Black people not leaving. I don't want to hear people telling us like what the trajectory of our city is or what it came from or what it's been without that context. And I think as we reflect on Juneteenth and all the things that Juneteenth is supposed to mean, which by the way, I'm not going to waste any time explaining to anybody listening what Juneteenth is, because I have to do that every year.
You have Google.
Yeah, but as we reflect on this day and talk about it, I would just implore people to be very mindful and honestly ask a Black Detroiter about stuff they've gone through. Ask about like, man, what's something that you kind of miss? What's something that's not here anymore that you wish was like? And I think the more we do that, the more we can get to a healthier place about the trajectory of the city and doing it in a more equitable way.
And the best part about asking someone that question is you ask 6 different people, you're going to get 6 different answers. Yep. It's not like you're going to get one package, just everything. You're going to get, I miss this thing. I miss when the slide used to be like this. I miss when Belle Isle had this. I miss this building downtown. I miss this place by my, and it's like just to see so many different areas. And so it help you piece together, like, I guess, an old map of the city, and just, it'll help you. It'll help you learn something if you don't do anything else today. It'll help you at least learn something about the city that, whether you love it, period, whether you love it for whatever, it'll help you take something and then move forward with that.
So I kind of want to end on something that I think about, kind of looking behind the scenes here. We go to events sometimes, and we all kind of share a look when we arrive at such events. And what do we need? Like, I have this wish that in 2 or 3 years, it isn't that way. It's like, oh, this is a new place. Like it'll be a new building unveiling, and we will have seen nobody, whether Black, white, whatever, that we have ever recognized before, at a hotel opening, or we'll be at a press box, and there will be literally, I remember there's been times where people are like, hey, oh, yo, can you get the trash? And it's like, no.
Yeah.
Right? Like, these are not okay situations, but they happen. We've got to get past that somehow. This can't keep going. This is 2024, man.
I think one of the ways that we got to, fix that is, number one, I think if you're a new organization or if you're somebody looking to do big things in the city of Detroit, number one, you got to hire Detroiters. I ain't saying your whole team got to be Detroiters, but you need to hire Detroiters. And I think that also means you may have to be a little bit more creative with your hiring process, because as we know about things like the paper ceiling and alternative forms of education and all this other kind of stuff, there are a lot of people with talent in the city of Detroit who may not necessarily have the same qualifications and credentials that you think, but are going to be phenomenal at helping you understand and navigate the city of Detroit. And I think when it comes to a city like this in particular, you have to look at it that way, because I love, people who are educated, and I love people who go after it. And the average Stanford grad ain't going to be able to come down and touch down here and get nothing done in the same way as somebody who grew up here. I'm sorry. That's just the way I feel about it.
There are so many businesses that have had like so many great ideas and so many great things that they're going to work on that come from out of state, come from out of the city, come here, spend 4 months and fail literally because they don't understand it. I remember I had a situation with Patch.com working for Grosse Pointe, and they had 5 requirements, and I met 3 of them. One of them was I did not go to one of the schools they wanted. And they brought in some kid from California, and he's like, "What do I need to know about this area here?" And I was like, "Oh, there's this and this and this." After 2 months, he quit. He's like, "Yeah, this is too hard. I don't understand part of what's happening here." And I'm like, "Yeah, I was trying to warn them about that." And then they patchily pulled the thing, and they no longer had the post open. And I was like, "Yeah, you could have literally just fixed that by hiring someone who exists in this area already. Like for certain things you can bring someone in and they can just kind of help and do what they need to do. But certain things, especially within this city and most cities like it, you need to have someone who understands the city, because while some things might function one way or another, in certain parts they function a little bit differently, and if you have someone who doesn't understand that, they're going to be behind, and they're going to keep being behind, and by the time they catch up, people will be somewhere else, and it just won't be worth it the time anymore.
Yeah, and so I think definitely when you're talking about anything front facing, that's what you got to focus on that. So when you go to those events or you talk to a lot of those people, there's just a fundamental misunderstanding of even just like something as simple as like the flow of people. I've worked with vendors and people, partnerships for people trying to run events, and somebody was like, "Yeah, so why don't we do it here?" And I'm just like, "So who's trying to come?" They're like, "Oh, we're trying to get the teens to come out." I was like, "There's no bus route that runs there." They're like, "Oh, okay. Well, that shouldn't be a big problem. Their parents can just drop them off." No, that's not going to happen. Like, you don't understand. You're trying to capture a demographic that lives mostly on the northwest side, but you're trying to throw an event on Mac and Bewick. That's not going to happen. Their parents are not going to drive that far. That's a 35-minute drive for a lot of people.
And not even that, but just like the standpoint of like someone who's from here. It's like, I've had many people come out of town from like weddings and such. They're like, "Oh, we're staying at this hotel that's in St. Clair Shores. We want to go downtown. It'll be a quick ride." I'm like, "No, it won't.
No, it won't.
It's not a quick ride, man." That's I mean, it's not necessarily far, but like you think you're gonna like, "Well, just can we walk?" I'm like, "No, you cannot."
No, what are you saying?
You need to have a car. It's like, "Well, I'm from this city. We don't need to drive." I'm like, "Then you probably need to invest in an Uber or something." Because like this is not going to work for you. This is not gonna, and like just having people who understand, like, while we would like for it to be a bit less drivey in the city, we understand like if you need to get somewhere, typically you're probably going to drive there. And if you don't understand that, you come from somewhere that's like, we can bike everywhere. I don't know, man. Maybe this isn't it for you.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest step. And, I think the last point of that is doesn't necessarily have to revolve solely around race and creed and all that. I think that's where people get tripped up in this conversation, because there's plenty of people of all races that know the city very well. Jared, you're one of them. But I think ultimately people have to sit down and they have to say, who are we doing this thing for? And be honest about it. Because when certain organizations come down and they're very honest about who their demo is and who they're trying to capture, people don't have an issue with it. I don't have an issue with Prime and Proper being where they are and serving the demographic that they serve. I don't even really like steak that much, and I definitely don't like spending that much money on dinner. But you know what? Some people do, and that's okay.
And even if there's a bit of a backlash when they first open, like it dies down when it's like, we know this is for this is for this, and this is fine. When you have it just be so like ambiguous to like, it might be this or it might be that, then you end up upsetting everybody, because when you start drawing hard lines at that point, then no one feels welcome.
Yep.
So like, I mean, as long as people who come here, they get the right people they need for help, whether it's just, letting them know where to go in the city, letting them know why this thing might not work out, why you think like if we go and put an establishment here and work from here, we can just expect people to show up because of this. Maybe not this time. There's no bus route. There's no this. These people, it's too far from the drive, etc. There's no parking anywhere. Just having people who understand the local area, like it makes things, it should be so easy. Like it should be pretty common knowledge, but some people just tend to think they can skip over that small detail and it ends up submarinating their whole point entirely.
Well, I think people come from other places and they're like, well, this is what I did in New York. This is what I did in Chicago. Whatever. I have so many more resources in comparison to other places. Because that's one thing too that I think happens here, is that there's so many people who come in who have so much more money than the locals. And so that money is power, and it kind of rolls over folks, and they think they can just roll over. and then they're surprised.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's really important to come in with an understanding, and having the proper advisors who know the town and know the landscape will help you mitigate some of that, because all that money is not infinite. It is still a very finite resource. And so I implore those who are looking to invest in the city and currently investing in the city to, be really mindful of having the people locally is sourcing the local talent. We want to source all our vegetables and meats locally, but not our talent locally. But you got to do it. You got to do it, especially in a place like this, places like Cleveland, places like Pittsburgh, or Baltimore, other medium-sized cities. Yeah, other medium-sized cities. You have to source the people who know the situation on the ground, because if you don't, you're just throwing money at a wall and hoping something sticks. And typically, it don't work that way.
I mean, that's like the biggest part, is like having all that money more than where you're going to is great. But if you have like $5 million and you show up to the city and you don't know what you're doing, you're just throwing $5 million at people who are going to take your money and say, yeah, this is great. I don't know what I'm doing. And you're not getting this back, but like, keep paying me, please. If you find the people, you could have half that, a third of that. But if you have the right people, it'll go way further than having all that money and not knowing what you're doing.
Bro, we've seen companies work with less than that. We've seen companies start out with 50 racks and turn into something real, in this city, because you can do it. And that's the beauty of a place like Detroit, is that you can just come in. All right, man, I got $50,000 worth of capital. Let's make it happen. You can do it. The city is trying its best to try to incentivize people and match, small business loans and all that kind of stuff. These are all positive things, but in order to do it, you got to be the type of person that's willing to take a chance on the local talent, and the local talent is going to look very different than the talent than you are used to in San Francisco, in Detroit, in DC, in Chicago. So, just be very open to that, and, be willing to take a chance on the folks who are already here, because I guarantee you, we may be a tough people, but we are loyal people. So you get us on your side, as you can see with with young Mike Duggan and a few other people, Big Danny G, you get Detroiters on your side, you're in a pretty good spot.
I mean, I think it's why projects like Daily Detroit are able to be as successful as we are. It's because Jer has found people who are in the community enough, who know what they're talking about, who understand the area, and just letting us work through that. It's allowed us to then grow together, grow through things, and like embolden the project even more. And like, it's very simple. You get people who know what they're talking about, who understand the area. You might find someone who's more qualified, but if they don't know the area that they're going to be going to, then all that quality doesn't matter at all, because they're going to go there, get frustrated, leave, or dissolve or whatever, and do something else. If you get the people who know what they're talking about, maybe they're a little bit rough around the edges at certain parts, you can shine those edges.
Yep.
But you can't teach them what it is to be in a certain city or a certain environment at all. Like, that's just from having lived experience. And if you're going to ignore lived experience, maybe you don't want to grow as much as you thought.
Yeah.
I think we'll leave it there.
There it is.
I appreciate both of you so very much. Thank you for being part of the show and also being my friend. I
You got
really
it.
appreciate you. I also appreciate our listeners. You are absolutely wonderful. And our members on Patreon, patreon.com/Daily Detroit. We are rolling out a member-only Discord. So you can have direct access to the team, ask us questions, doing our own news feed in there, different things. So that way we can, really try to give back to those who support us. With that, I'm Jer Stays.
I'm Norris Howard.
And I'm Fletcher Sharp.
Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit. Talk tomorrow.